2020 is over, and so 2021 has come on. And to wrap up 2020, I feel like in the most effective manner, we're going to be talking about the best films of 2020, the worst films of 2020, and the most bland, boring, miserable films of 2020. We're going to be doing it top 5 for each, alternating, so we'll start with the 5th best, then go to 5th blandest, then go to 5th worst, so on and so forth. Hopefully you guys enjoy, and let's dive in, why not? Woo! For those unaware, in 2020, Steve McQueen, established director of, for instance, 12 Years a Slave, made a TV show, somewhat, basically an anthology film series called Small Axe. My 5th best film of 2020 goes to Mangrove, the first film from Small Axe, which I feel like had one of the better scripts of the year. The performances were strong. Overall, it was a very intense look at what Steve McQueen was trying to portray, and so I thought he did it excellently. The 5th blandest film of the year goes to Croods 2 New Age. This film just feels so uninspired. It's just DreamWorks. Why did you guys make another Croods film? You were on such a roll with How to Train Your Dragon, Shrek, Kung Fu Panda, even Captain Underpants is just better than this. It's not particularly bad, it's just... why? What about Croods required a sequel? And especially a sequel is predictable and as obvious as this. There's nothing interesting, it's just, Croods meet modern people. Come on. Sticking with the animation theme, our 5th worst film is Scoob. Oh, this one hurts. I was really excited for a Scooby-Doo film using what looked like an interesting animation style and art style and everything. But the celebrity voices aren't great, and then the forced pop culture references. Simon Cowell really drags this one down, and it's so chaotic. In a bad way. It feels cluttered, messy, it doesn't feel like anything is right to focus. It's so obviously setting up a cinematic universe, and it feels like it's constantly fumbling over trying to introduce a new character so it can be the Scooby-Doo Avengers film. Woo! My 4th best film is Another Round, which is a brilliant film starring Mads Mikkelsen in a brilliant performance. It focuses on this group of teachers who decide to better their lives. They will all have 0.05% blood alcohol level constantly at all times to see if that makes them have more fun, be more enjoyable and all that stuff. And it's a very entertaining, enjoyable film that is also really melancholy and sad towards the end, but with one of the most uplifting and best endings of the year. Genuinely would really recommend this one. It was a toss-up for 4th blandest between this and Extraction, but at the end of the day, Extraction has some at least silliness to it, and it feels like it's not taking itself too seriously. The Old Guard, on the other hand, is miserable. It's not fun, it's boring, it's not particularly well shot, it's not particularly well acted, none of the jokes that it tries to make land. And then when it's not making jokes, it's just boring, serious, miserable action. There's no sense of anything to it. It's just a by-the-numbers action film. God, talk about a disappointment. We were waiting years for the New Mutants, and then it rolls around like a zombie that's just demanding just to be like smacked in the head until it just dies. This film released during the really bad part of the pandemic in theaters, almost as it felt like a tactic from the studio so that no one would see what a mess it was. It's just, this is everything that makes superhero films bad. And the fact that this was trying to be an innovative superhero film and that it was going down a horror route, God, it did not pull it off. Woo! Unfortunately, in 2020, we lost a brilliant actor, Chadwick Boseman, and he delivers a career-best performance in our 3rd best film of the year, Mourinhos' Black Bottom. He is very much the lead of this film, and his presence accentuates it so much more than if he wasn't in it. Viola Davis plays the titular Mourinhos, and while she has less screen time than I imagined she would have, every moment of it counts. This is a film where the script it's fast. It's adapted from a stage play, and it feels like a stage play in certain ways. And I mean that in the best way possible. Everything's fast, everything's witty, everything has this sense of grandness to it. It feels like a film of people with big dreams, and it really, really works in that aspect. Who asked for a Kissing Booth 2? Kissing Booth 1 was absolutely atrocious, and Kissing Booth 2, I just can't feel anything about. The only reason this isn't any higher up is just because it elicits basically no reaction from me. This could have very easily been on the worst list, but I just don't care. It's 2 hours long, and I think that's the thing I got the most angry at about the whole thing. I just don't care. This was one of the first films to come out in 2020, but Dolittle really set a bar for one of the worst films of the year. Robert Downey Jr.'s performance in here genuinely is atrocious. I couldn't understand basically a word he was saying. The CGI on animals isn't great, and let's be real, talking animals is never particularly great, but here it feels especially clunky and uninspired. That's the whole aura throughout the entire film. It's a mess. Genuinely abhorrent. Woo! Sound of Metal is absolutely fantastic. This is one of the most creative films of the year, really putting us into the perspective of someone struggling with hearing loss, and every moment of it feels real. You really feel the struggle of it all. You feel how torn up inside he is about it. You feel the pain that he's feeling about this. Riz Ahmed's performance is fantastic. The sound design is almost flawless. This is genuinely a brilliant film, and I recommend everyone to see it. Another bland film that very easily could have made its way onto the worst list is Wonder Woman 1984. Oh my god, this is one of the most cliche-ridden superhero films I've ever seen. It starts off with the classic of superhero as a child talks to an adult figure who gives them an inspiring life lesson that will come up to work on later in the film, and from there it just gets more and more trope and cliche-ridden. Generally, DC's films are at least interesting to talk about, even if they're not particularly great. But this one's just boring. It's also 2.5 hours long. What the hell, DC? Artemis Fowl is a mess. Let's just be real. You guys just need to see some of the screenshots from this film just to understand how awful it looks. It's a mess. The main character is one of the most unlikable things I've ever seen. This was atrocious. I wasn't a big fan of the book, but even I recognized the book to be so much vastly superior to that. Woo! And my best film of the year is The Father, starring Anthony Hopkins and Olivia Colman. This is a film about an old man dealing with dementia, and his daughter looking after him. And as much as Sound of Metal puts you into the perspective of someone dealing with hearing loss, The Father puts you into the perspective of someone dealing with dementia, and does it to such a higher degree. You feel as constantly confused as the main character Anthony does at all times. The plot doesn't really make sense, but it's not supposed to. Every second feels like you're walking down a never-ending corridor that's constantly twisting and twisting, and you never know where you're going to go next. And Anthony Hopkins' performance is outstanding. Superb work. How do you take a classic film by an incredible director and turn it into something this bland? Rebecca deserves extra points for being one of the worst, most uninspired remakes I've ever seen. Armie Hammer just sits around blankly staring at things. Lily James is in the film, and the whole thing left me feeling so empty and hollow. This is a film that when writing the bland list I forgot about. Looked through the films I'd watched this year, saw it and went, oh, that came out. That's a bland film. And the worst film of the year is 365 Days. I don't really like the use of the word cringe in a lot of cases, but I do feel like it applies here. There's so many needle drops in the film which feel so out of place. One of the characters gets assassinated and his son is crying about it. And then a pop song starts playing while everything's moving in slow motion. This film's uninspired. This film is essentially just softcore porn. This film is misogynistic. This film is... Everything about this film is something that's wrong with it. This is one of the worst films I've seen, and 100% deserving of the worst film of the year. But now you've seen mine. So, what were your guys' best films, blandest films, and worst films of 2020? Let me know in the comments below, and for now, make sure you subscribe, and have a fun year.